on drug treatment programs. It's disgusting. And it doesn't work. It works for some small percentage, but it doesn't work for most.
So what Tucker is talking about in this clip is how successful the Taliban drug treatment program is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Taliban drug treatment program in Afghanistan involves forcibly rounding up drug addicts from the streets and placing them into rehabilitation centers or prisons. Since their return to power in August 2021, the Taliban has pursued an aggressive campaign to cleanse the streets of drug addicts by detaining thousands of people in overcrowded. Okay, so this is sort of an avenue, okay, but then they force like the Islamic fundamentals on, and then somebody like Tucker, he's really just a Marxist, think that this is the most successful program. Yeah, so he totally, I guess, has never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. No, I know he has. Okay, so part of the problem we have in this country, and I don't think the government will ever listen. They'll only listen to the people with 25 letters after their name. So see, there's one area where I'm an expert in, and it's Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've read probably every single one of because I sought them out. And every single peer-reviewed article ever written about Alcoholics Anonymous has it wrong. They're not going to have the accurate data. They're not going to understand it. Even trying to read what they write makes no sense. Because you have to be an alcoholic to understand the alcoholic. You do. I don't care how long you go to school for, you will not understand it. In fact, people that get sober and then go on to be like, social workers in that area, they it ends up, they're not the same anymore. I don't know what happened. I think it's because look, Alcoholics Anonymous saved me. It did. But I thought it was bullshit, but I was desperate enough. But so we used to have what was 30-day programs for alcoholics. Not going into a psych unit. It was strictly a building or strictly a center that took drug and alcohol people that wanted to get off the drugs and alcohol. And so they would have you in detox for a few days, because with alcohol anyway, you do need to monitor. Now, there's many people that I didn't go that route. I mean, I did before I ever got to AA. I did like a 30-day program, so I haven't, but they don't really have those. They only have a few here and there. There used to be a lot of them. But globalists came along, started merging hospitals together, and decided, there's no reason we can't just admit the alcoholic and drug addicts onto the psych unit. Yeah, that was the stupidest thing ever, but it gave them money. So then people come in thinking they're going to get help, and they're like, these groups don't help me. I'm not here because they're not there. Like, you could say they're like they'll put depressed. But we need to put them on a CWA protocol, which is, monitoring them for alcohol withdrawal. Now, there are some people that you do have to monitor for alcohol withdrawal, because I've seen twice people go into alcoholic seizures. It's scary because they stop breathing for a long time, and sometimes because they don't stop seizing. And so sometimes they have to be intubated. Yeah. Now, but it's not often that happens. But the hospitals found a way to make money. We don't need to send them to any drug treatment. Let's just shut those down. They can come onto the psych unit. They get no help that way. None. See, that's what I mean. Like back when, 20, 30 years ago, we had a better system. We did. Alcoholics Anonymous is much more successful than people think it is. Are there some people that relapse? Yeah, they do. And if they had any amount of time, they come back right away because they remember what it was like. It is not an easy program. You're not pampered. Tucker must be talking about the treatment centers he's been to, like, Betty Ford or, these Beverly Hills cushy things. Yeah. No, but if you just go to a 30-day program, inpatient, that's what most patients wanting to get sober, and there's a lot of them that want to get sober. Yeah, we many years ago had in my county, when I worked in the ER for Northwestern, talk about what scam they were running. I was so excited. I thought finally they were going to give patients, because they were working with other hospitals to where they'd get them into 30-day programs. No, it was just a scam to get them into a 5-day detox and then just let them go. So many patients were pissed off because they advertised this program like as it was called the Way Out or something. And it was a total disappointment. Yeah, total disappointment, total scam. And yet, do you think the hospital administrators or any of the people cared? That, like, you're not helping people by just keeping them in the psych unit where it's not addressing their needs. It's not. But they closed so many of the inpatient 30-day programs because that's what patients want, because then it puts them on more solid ground. They get into a treatment pattern, and then they can either go back home, go back to their home and continue that plan, like going to AA, getting a sponsor, the steps aren't easy. But if you're desperate enough to stay sober and they start those steps while you're in treatment, then you got some solid ground. And if you're not ready to go home, many times they used to be able to get you into a sober living home for 6 months to a year. Then you for sure can get grounded. That is, if you don't go back to drinking. The other thing here, which is true, okay, about this article, is that people need to face their consequences. When you get social workers involved in this area, they are the worst people to get, because they don't think anybody should ever go to jail. I hit it back and forth with a supervisor of mine going way back over a woman that was abusing, it's a long time ago, abusing the 911 system, like 2 or 3 times a day abusing it. And she was in this vicious cycle. I could see it. The social worker who was my supervisor, she could not see it. That's what I mean. The only experts when it comes to drug and alcohol is not going to be anybody with 25 letters after their name. It is going to be the people that have recovered. It's the way it is because we know the mindset. But the government never listens to us. Neither does the hospitals. Not that they ever were to begin with. That's the way you fix this. You can get all the drugs off the street and not make it easy for them, okay? But the problem is you need to bring, because there's many people that want those programs. And they'll stay in them because it's something solid and it can, get them, at least clear. And then we could monitor them early on, but now they just put them on psych unit. So coping skills, none of that. The alcoholic doesn't give a shit about any of that. They need some hard knocks like AA, the 12 steps, okay? That's what they're looking for. And they took all of that shit away. The government, all these hospitals that merged. So I've been saying this for years, but we had this patient that was abusing the 911 system. We ended up having to have this phone call with this judge, and he wanted to hear from everyone. And I was sitting in on the call, but my social worker supervisor said, I don't want you to speak. Because I was saying, no, she needs to go to jail. Not because I disliked her, but because I cared about her living. I'm like, you can either cater to her and not let her suffer her consequences, and then her death will be on your head. Or you can realize that this may be the very thing that helps her. And guess what? I was right. Why was I right? Because I know the mindset. That's why. I know the mindset. There's no unless a psychiatrist has been an addict or an alcoholic and has gone through that, the treatment or the recovery. They're not I don't care who you are. I don't care how smart you think you are. I don't care what kind of empathy you have. The only experts in this area are other people that have recovered from drug or alcohol. Because they understand the mindset. This woman did end up going to jail because luckily she moved to an area where the sheriff's department started writing reports and eventually put her in jail for like 30 days, 60 days. And then from there, she went into a sober living home. She twice came and saw me in the ER to tell me that going to jail was the best thing that happened to her. I was like, yep, I know. That's why I wasn't trying to hurt her. But the social worker doesn't understand that. Psychiatrists don't understand it. bring back the 30-day programs.